Lance is one of two major manufacturers that buys their peanuts from the grower. We buy directly from the grower, and there are only two major manufacturers that I'm aware of that buy directly from the grower. So we think that puts us in a fairly unique position to talk. Just in a general sort of way, about 50 to 60% of our business is in company brands. That's Lance brands, or I've got a list of all the brands up here. The Archway, the Tom's potato chips is primarily the Tom's brand is primarily potato chips. Cape Cod, which is a potato chip line as well, but it's a kettle chip. It's a little more sophisticated chip than the flat chip that we normally sell under the Tom's label. And of course, they're the leading #1 share of peanut butter sandwich crackers in the U.S. And then about 30% of our business comes from private label. These are the box stores that we manufacture their label and sell in their plants under their labels. And then we manufacture about 10% of our business, and these percentages are pretty fluid. They float around. We manufacture a lot of contract manufacturing for other major resource companies. To give you a little bit of a flavor of where we are, the DSD, that's the direct store-door delivery that's owned by the company, is pretty much the Southwest, Southeast, and Atlantic coast. And then we use distributors for the rest of the United States, but I got to admit that toward the western side of the United States, we're kind of slim over there. We're primarily concentrated in this area of the company with about 700 independent distributors, along with our 1,400 company-owned DSD operations. There are 8 manufacturing locations and 12 manufacturing plants that Lance has. 3 of the locations have multiple manufacturing functions on the same property. In the Columbus operation, the Columbus, Georgia operation, we have 3 separate independent manufacturing operations. One is a bakery where we make sandwich crackers, of course, saltines, graham crackers, organic mini crackers, cracker and creams, Dunkaroos, which you probably don't know too much about. It's primarily sold in Canada. A few of them are sold in the U.S., and it's a General Mills product. We also have a confectionery plant or candy plant there in Columbus, Georgia, that makes the peanut plank that I hope you all are familiar with, along with some other resource companies' brands. A nougat bar, a crunch bar, which are Slim Fast brands. They're not Lance brands, but they're co-manufactured for them, and a multigrain nut bar for one of the Nature Valley bars for General Mills. It's difficult for us, and though occasionally we may try, but it's difficult for us to add back quality once it's been lost. You just, generally speaking, as a principle, have a hard time adding back quality. And so I've just picked out some things that are not new. They're not going to be rocket science for you, but just picked out some things and how they relate to the manufacturing function, shelling and manufacturing function. But I'm looking at it primarily this morning all the way through the system as a manufacturer as to how it relates. And there's 2 basic areas that we're concerned with right now, and that's alpha toxins and the pathogens, salmonella predominantly. Now, we've had 2 or 3 good years with alpha toxin. And the fear I have is that all of a sudden we don't get the sense that we are having a very important issue on our hands. We've had 2 good crops. Those crops have not had an overabundance of alpha toxin, and we just kind of been sailing along. But we also haven't had in the last 2 years any major drought issues. And what I wanted to say to you is I don't want us to get lulled as an industry into just simply not taking care of business with respect to those areas that we need to be concerned with as it relates to the alpha toxin issue. And then secondly, the pathogens are a major concern. Manufacturers have kill steps in our process, as we talked about with the RTE areas. We want to maintain a harvest system that maintains as lower a base of contamination or infestation, or however you want to call it, of the pathogens that come into our plants. The lower the base is, the better the differential is between our kill steps and the final product. So those are the two principles that I wanted to just talk to you about. And under aflatoxin, there's two key issues again, and this is not rocket science, is that we want to reduce the LSKs and reduce farm material as much as we can. You also have some investment in there. I just looked at the price of peanuts on a per pound of a farmer stock ton based on our loan support, and there are 4 components in that ton. One of which has no value to you as a farmer on a farmer stock, and there's no value in the pricing system, and the other 3 have degrees of lesser value. The most important is the sound mature kernels at about a little over 25 cents a pound. LSKs, you know, are about 7 cents a pound. Other kernels, which you don't have a whole lot to do with respect to harvest, because that's just immature kernels that's in the shell. But the LSKs and the SMKs are important. If you can move some of that LSKs over to the SMKs, that will not only incentivize you, but it also is an incentive to us to get peanuts that are high. We'd rather have them and get them and receive them in the shell rather than having to process extra on the LSKs. What is culture? Culture is what you do naturally. It's getting the combine driver, the picker, the tractor driver to just do the right thing with respect to pathogens and aflatoxins and farm material when no one is looking. I would compare it to sort of like when most of us are at the age that we all learn how to drive on an automobile that had a clutch in it. Now, culture is today you get in that automobile and you do not have to think about when you disengage and when you engage that clutch. It just comes naturally. You don't think about it when you approach a stoplight. That's culture. When you first tried to learn how to drive that car, you had to think constantly, how much do I let the clutch out? When do I disengage it when I'm coming to a stop? And that culture moved to the point where you get in a car today and you drive it and you're playing with the radio and all the other the power windows, and you're not thinking about the fact that you've got to make sure that clutch is disengaged and engaged at the proper time. That's culture. And that's what I want us to understand. We've been working with that very diligently in the manufacturing business. How do you make a distinction between an employee that works in a raw section of the shelling plant versus an employee that works in an RTE area? Well, you smock him. You sanitize his hands, his feet. You clean the air. You separate the operation so that it can't be cross-contaminated. Well, in some cases, that's 20, 30 years they've been driving this car one way, and all of a sudden we got to turn them around and get them to naturally drive the car another way. And it's been a struggle. And I would tell you that we spend as much time on dealing with the culture of these procedures as we do developing the procedures itself. We can write all kinds of graphics and post them in the plants. We can train people in meetings, but the bottom line is that you've got to implement that yourself, and you've got to constantly work on them to the point that they can operate that clutch automobile without thinking about it. And the people that are in this audience are the ones that control that and drive that culture down to the level of the tractor driver and the combine and the peanut picker driver. It's you. You've got to be willing to accept that idea of culture change as long as it's the plant manager that has to make that decision in the manufacturing business. And it's the owner, the grower, that sets that tone and begins to develop that culture that causes us to literally maybe change the way we've always done it to a way that we naturally do it in the most appropriate way that protects that product from contamination of pathogens or aflatoxin.